83 ఉన్నారు. A very good morning to one and all. So today we will be continuing our class on disorders of ocular motility. So we have discussed about the basic aspects in the previous two classes. What are the extraocular muscles? What are their actions? What do you mean by binocular single vision? What are grades of binocular single vision? What is amblyopia? What is diplopia? What is confusion? All these things we have seen in the previous two classes. So today we'll be going into the pathology part, that is the exact strabismus or squint, actual part, core part. So let us see what is the strabismus, what are the various varieties, and what all is going to happen here. So definition: misalignment of visual axis of two eyes is called strabismus. So the two eyes in the primary gaze, they remain orthophoric, that is they remain in orthophoria. Both eyes will be looking straight. Okay, so I told you visual axis is an axis or a line joining an object to the fovea centralis. So an object which we are viewing, suppose you are viewing your computer screen. From your computer screen to the fovea centralis, a line joining the 2 points is known as visual axis. So both the eyes have got two visual axes which are straight. So when there is any misalignment of the visual axis, suppose one axis is straight and the other eye is looking this side or the other eye is looking this side, then we call it as strabismus or squint. So strabismus is basically misalignment of the visual axis of the two eyes. This is known as strabismus. For example, you see here in this case, this child, this right eye is deviated inside, this left eye is looking straight. So the visual axis of this left eye, if you draw a line, it will be straight. But the visual axis of this right eye, if you draw, it will be going somewhere inside. So there is a misalignment of the visual axis of both the eyes. This is known as strabismus or squint. Okay. So here you see this diagram in the superior part, this upper diagram, this shows both eyes are perfectly in orthophoria, and the intersection of this vertical and horizontal meridians is a fovea. It is a diagrammatic representation. Okay. So this red dot or red circle here is the fovea centralis. You see both eyes are looking straight, and both the fovea centralis of both eyes are corresponding to one another, and this is the object. The image of this object is exactly falling on the right eye's fovea and the left eye's fovea, and the brain is interpreting it as a single object without any double vision. So this is what it happens normally in orthophoria. So in orthophoria, both eyes are looking straight. The image of the object falls on the fovea of both the eyes, that is the intersection of these two lines here for diagrammatic representation. And in the brain, in this rectangle box here, in the brain, these two images are fused as a one image and a single image is seen. That is what happens in a normal person. Now, suppose we are projecting one image onto one eye. Suppose this circle is projected onto the right eye and a triangle is projected onto the left eye's fovea. So then this is known as confusion. Confusion means both eyes are looking straight, or both eyes may not be looking straight also, but when two dissimilar images, see this is a circle, this is a triangle, both are completely opposite to one another. They are not one and the same, and they are not related to each other. So this is a circle, this is a triangle, both are two different objects. So that when the image of this circle falls on the fovea of the right eye, and image of this triangle falls on fovea of the left eye, the brain gets confused as to which image to process. So the brain starts seeing double. So it starts seeing one triangle superimposed over a circle. So the brain will be seeing two images. So normally only one image should be projected onto the both fovea, and one image is interpreted by the brain. That is normal. But in case of a phenomena called confusion, what happens is one image falls on the fovea of one eye and another image falls on the fovea of the other eye. So finally what happens is both these images reach the brain, and in brain it sees two images, that is one is of a triangle and one is of a circle. So the brain gets confused as to what is the exact object, whether it is a triangle or whether it is a circle. The brain gets confused. This is called confusion. So practically it is never seen clinically. Usually this confusion is most of the times it is only a theoretical entity. So practically confusion is very rare, because when one different image falls on the fovea of the other, it automatically gets suppressed. Yesterday I told you what is suppression, abnormal retinal correspondence, and all these things. So when this kind of a confusion arises in the brain automatically suppresses the image from one of the eyes, so that there is no confusion. So this type of a confusion is usually a theoretical phenomena written in textbooks, but usually practically it is very rarely seen. Next, now coming to the strabismus proper. Suppose there is a squint. You see this eye, it is looking straight, but this eye is deviated. You can see this vertical axis is straight here, but the vertical axis is slightly deviated in this side. So here what happens is, it is because of strabismus or squint. There is a deviation in this right eye, whereas the left eye is looking straight. Now there is an object here. So the image of the object is falling exactly on the fovea of this right eye, but it is not falling on the fovea of the left eye. It is falling somewhere else, slightly beside the fovea. Normally, when both eyes are looking straight, in this upper diagram, if you see, the image of this object is falling exactly at the center. That is on the fovea of the both eyes, and the brain is interpreting it clearly. But in case of squint, when there is a misalignment, here this right eye is deviated slightly towards the outside. You can see the vertical axis is slightly deviated towards the outside or right side. So when there is a deviation of the eye, the image of this object falls on the fovea of the straight eye, whereas the image of this object doesn't fall on the fovea because the eye has deviated because of squint. Because the eye has deviated, instead of falling on the fovea, the image falls on some other part of the retina, that is somewhere beside the fovea. Now, yesterday I told you about that Donder's law or Listing's law. I told you about the Listing's law, that each particular point has x, y, and z coordinates in space. Suppose this point of intersection of both these lines, this fovea centralis, has got an x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis value in space. So that will correspond to this part. So if the image is falling on the fovea of both the eyes, the image will be seen as if it is present in this part of the visual field. But in case of squint, now what happens is this image is falling somewhere here. Now the exact spatial localization point, that is the x-axis value, y-axis, and z-axis value, as per that Listing's law, of this particular point of the retina is somewhere else, somewhere here. That's why you get double vision. You start seeing two images. So normally on both the fovea, the image will fall. It is all clear. Brain will see only one image. But when there is a squint, when there is a deviation, because of the deviation of the eyeball, the image doesn't fall exactly on the fovea. It falls somewhere here, somewhere towards the right or towards the left. So every point of the retina has a particular spatial value. Suppose this fovea centralis, it has got a particular x, y, and z value in space. So if the image falls on the fovea, it looks as if it is present straight in front of you. If image falls somewhere here on the right side, you feel as if the image is located somewhere over the right side in the visual field. Suppose the image falls somewhere here, it appears as if the image is somewhere in the left side of the visual field. So similarly, in this eye, as it is straight, the image is falling exactly on the fovea, so there is no problem. You are seeing it straight in front of your eyes, straight in front, the image is present in its exact place where it is located. But here what happens, because of squint, the image is not exactly falling on the fovea. It is falling somewhere beside it. So this particular part of the retina has some different spatial value. So the spatial value of this one is, of this point of the retina is this space, this particular part of space. So it appears as if the object is located somewhere towards the right side of the actual object. So that's why you get double vision. You start seeing two images. So one image is the exact correct image of the straight eye. That is, this is the normal eye. It falls on the fovea. So this one exactly you are seeing in its location where it is present, straight in front of you. But here what happens is, because the image is falling on some other point, and some other point has a difference value in space, it appears as if the image is located somewhere beside the actual object. That's why you see two images. That is known as diplopia. Hope you are all clear. Okay. Now classification of strabismus. So basically the squint or strabismus is a scientific name and squint is a common English term. So classification of strabismus is apparent or pseudo strabismus. So anywhere in medical field you have something pseudo. Pseudo means false. So why it is called false? We'll see in the later slides. So the classification of strabismus is, it is an apparent squint or a pseudo strabismus. It is a latent squint or a heterophoria. So phoria means it is latent. What is that latent? We will see. And manifest squint or heterotropia. In manifest squint, again, there are of two types, concomitant squint and concomitant squint. So basically, we are classifying the squint or strabismus. Strabismus is of three types. One is apparent squint, also known as pseudo strabismus. It is false strabismus. Why it is false? I'll explain you. And then latent squint or heterophoria. That means usually when you see a person, he looks normal as if there is no squint, but only when you do some tests, only then you can identify that there is a squint. So that is known as heterophoria. Phoria means the squint is hidden, it is latent. Only when you do some tests clinically, only on doing some tests like Maddox dot test or Bursford dot test, etc., you can quantify that there is really a squint is present. And similarly, manifest squint. Here, directly on seeing the person, you can see that the eye is deviated. It is known as tropia, heterotropia, and it is again further classified into concomitant squint and concomitant squint. Concomitant means paralytic squint. Okay. So this is an example of a heterotropia. If you see directly, this eye is looking straight. You see that when you show a torchlight, the pupil light reflex is exactly falling in the center. But for this eye, it is not falling on the center. It is falling somewhere nasally. So here it is a heterotropia. That is, as soon as you see the patient, you can tell that there is some squint. Now, if you see my eyes, both of my eyes are looking straight. That means either I'm normal, I'm completely normal, I don't have any squint, or I might be having some apparent squint or heterophoria, which you can elicit only if you perform some particular tests. Okay, what are those tests? We'll see in the later slides. So in heterotropia, as soon as you see this person, you can say that, see, there is a squint. This eye is rotating completely, but this eye is not moving. This eye is completely moving, but this eye is fixed. It is not moving. So here there is some paralysis of the muscles of this particular eye, left eye, because see, the right eye is totally moving freely in all the directions, but the left eye is not moving. So that's why this is a case of a paralytic squint. It is a heterotropia actually. It is a heterotropia because as soon as you see the face of the patient, you can notice that there is a deviation of the eye, and in that it is an incompetent squint or a paralytic squint. Why it is paralytic squint, we will see it later on. Okay, this was a case actually I have seen in my PG days. This person presented with squint and ptosis. There was drooping of the upper eyelid and there was epistaxis, bleeding from the nose. In the ENT you might have learned. So a patient who is a diabetic, around 52 years male, a 52 years male with known case of diabetes and hypertension with the deviation of this with paralytic squint and ptosis and bleeding from the nose. Finally, when we went on doing all the tests, we diagnosed it as an aneurysm of the internal carotid artery, which was present in the intracavernous part of the internal carotid artery. You have got a cavernous sinus. In the cavernous sinus, there is the internal carotid artery. So from that internal carotid artery part, in the cavernous sinus, there was an aneurysm, which was eroding into the sphenoid sinus. So because of the sphenoid sinus bone erosion, there was bleeding from his nose. So that was the history. In neuro-ophthalmology class, I will show you the MRI pictures and all of this space. There it will be interesting. This is also same thing. So what is pseudostrabismus? So I told you strabismus is of three types. One is pseudostrabismus, another one is heterophoria or latent squint, and the other one is heterotropia or manifest squint. Heterotropia or manifest squint is again of two types. One is concomitant squint and other one is incomitant squint or paralytic squint. So what is the pseudostrabismus? First one. Here the visual axis of the two eyes are parallel. That is, both eyes are looking straight. But we get a false impression that there is some misalignment of the visual axis or there is a deviation of eyeball. We get a false impression. Pseudo means false. We get a false impression that there is squint. It is because of some alterations in the adnexal part of the eyes. For example, I'll show you in diagrams. So pseudo-esotropia, it is an apparent convergent squint. Eso means convergence, exo means divergence. So in squint, you have to remember, anywhere the word eso is used. Eso means inward deviation, or inward deviation is called eso, outward deviation is called exo. So pseudo-esotropia, it is an apparent convergent squint. It is seen in prominent epicanthal fold and negative angle kappa. What is this? We will see. And pseudo-exotropia. Exotropia means apparent divergent squint. Exo, in exo there is cross. So X means cross. So here usually it is deviated outside. It is an apparent divergent squint. It is seen in hypertelorism and positive angle kappa. Angle kappa, some of you, if you remember, I told you in your first class, the angle between the visual axis and the optical axis. If it is positive, it is known as exotropia, because in positive we have a plus and in X we have a plus. If you rotate this X, it will become a plus. So positive angle kappa, pseudo-exotropia, negative angle kappa, pseudo-esotropia. So what is this prominent epicanthal fold? We will see. So here you see, this is a child. Actually here you see, both eyes are actually straight. But here it is appearing as if this right eye is slightly deviated inwards. So this is a photograph of a child with pseudo-esotropia. So here, the right eye is looking as if it is deviated inside. It is because, see, this is known as epicanthal fold. A tissue of skin, a skin which is extra skin which is present on the medial aspect of the eye. This is known as an epicanthal fold. So here it is more prominent. Here it is less prominent on the left side. Here the sclera part, only less amount of sclera is seen. Here more amount of sclera is seen. So because of this contrast, you get a false impression that this eye is deviating inside and this eye is looking straight. So this is pseudo-esotropia. Pseudo-esotropia is seen in prominent epicanthal fold. Epicanthal fold is this one. See, the fold of the skin is more. So here it appears as if this eye is deviated inside and this eye is looking straight. That is because this extra skin covers the sclera. So here only less amount of sclera is visible, but here more amount of sclera is visible. So that's why what happens is you get a false impression as if this eye has deviated inside and this eye is looking straight. This is pseudo-esotropia. Okay. So similarly here also you see there is a prominent epicanthal fold. So here this one, here because of this epicanthal fold, extra skin, the sclera is not visible. Here the skin is little less, so the sclera is visible. That's why it appears as if the size deviated inside. This is a pseudoesotropia. Similarly, pseudoexotropia. It is seen in hypertelorism. There is a condition called hypertelorism. Hyper means anything which is more. So telorism means interpupillary distance. So the distance between the two pupils is more. It is because of extra growth of this maxillary process, of this frontonasal process, sorry. The face develops from the medial frontonasal process, maxillary processes, and the mandibular processes, if you go to embryology in your first year. So the frontonasal process which is present, that one is developed more. It is, the bone part is more here. So thereby displacing both the eyes peripherally. So here, because of this widened medial frontonasal process during development stage, it appears as if this both the eyeballs are deviated towards the outside. But actually, there is no squint here. Squint means it is only because of paralysis of this extraocular muscle or imbalance between the extraocular muscles. But here there is no imbalance of the extraocular muscles. The eyes appear outside. This is because of the bony abnormality. There is a wider piece of bone which pushes both the eyes towards the periphery. That's why this is known as pseudoexotropia. So this is again a pseudoexotropia. No, the image is not that clear, but here you can clearly make out. So here the squint means the pathology should be either in the muscle or in the nerves. But here, because of bony pathology, excess bone of growth, the eyes are displaced laterally. That's why it appears as if there is a squint. Okay, that is pseudoexotropia. Now coming to heterophoria. Heterophoria means what I told you. It is a latent squint. Latent squint means when you look straight, it appears as if the person is normal. Only when you perform some tests, there are some particular tests which you have to do. Only if you do that tests only, the heterophoria will become manifest and you can notice a deviation of the eye. Otherwise, because of binocular single vision, both the eyes will be kept straight. So in heterophoria, what happens is, suppose the lateral rectus muscle of this eye is slightly weak and this eye is completely functional. So when you want to look at an object, because of extra action of this medial rectus muscle and convergence and fusion phenomena of brain, both eyes will look straight. But when you occlude one eye, then you can notice that there is a deviation in the other eye. That is heterophoria. So let us see one by one. It is a latent strabismus. That means it is not manifest. Only if you perform some tests only, you can say that there is a squint. So it is a latent type. Orthophoria is only theoretical. So orthophoria, that is perfect alignment, perfect straight parallel visual axis of both the eyes, is only a theoretical phenomenon. Even you and me, all of us have some amount of heterophoria. Usually it is seen in form of exophoria. Even if you perform cover test for our eyes also, you can see some amount of deviation of the eyeball. So orthophoria is only a theoretical entity. Each and every one of us have some amount of latent strabismus or heterophoria, which becomes prominent on testing by performing some tests. But it is not that much significant as to cause some disability for us. So orthophoria is theoretical. Physiological heterophoria is universal. Physiologically, we all have. Fusion keeps both the eyes in orthophoria. So what I told you, fusion in your last classes is when one eye is seeing one object, other eye is seeing another object. For suppose you see that lion and cage, simultaneous perception, fusion, and stereopsis. 3 grades of binocular single vision I told you yesterday. In that, second grade is fusion. In fusion, what we do, we showed an image of a rabbit. So rabbit had the image of the rabbit was incomplete in one eye, in one image, and it was also incomplete in the other image. So the brain will fuse both the images. In one image, the rabbit had no tail and it had a no bouquet and it had only one ear. In the other image, the rabbit had another ear and another bouquet. So in yesterday's class, all those have attended. So because of fusion, the brain interprets it as a single image. So that's why this physiological heterophoria, we don't have any symptoms because of that, and we don't have any diplopia because fusion. That is a second grade of binocular single vision. The rabbit example, it keeps both the eyes in straight alignment. Okay. Now, what are the various types of heterophoria? I told you, eso means inward, exo means outside. So esophoria, eyeballs tend to converge. So eyeballs tend to converge, that is esophoria. Now, what are the types? It could be convergence excess. So see, if the medial rectus is working more, there is a phenomena called accommodation. So in accommodation, what happens is both the eyeballs tend to converge. So suppose you are reading a book. When you are reading a book, you need to use your accommodation reflex. In accommodation reflex, what happens? There is constriction of the pupil, increase in the anterior curvature of the lens, and there is also convergence of both the eyeballs. So if the medial rectus is working more and there is excess of convergence, esophoria is more for near. That is, if the medial rectus is working more because of excessive convergence, when you are doing near work, there is more convergence. Similarly, divergence weakness. Suppose the lateral rectus muscles cause the divergence. Suppose the lateral rectus muscle is weak. So when you are looking at a distance, what happens is the lateral rectus muscle doesn't work well. So there is a weakness of the divergence. So when there is a weakness of this lateral rectus muscle, automatically the eyeball tends to converge inside because of the medial rectus muscle overaction. So that is known as divergence weakness. So esophoria, eyeballs tend to converge. It can be convergence excess, overaction of the medial rectus muscle. It is more prominent while doing the near work, because while doing near work, both eyeballs converge and medial rectus is acting more. And the other type is divergence weakness. So when you are looking at a far object, the lateral rectus should work more, because when you are converging, both eyes are like this. When you want to look at a far object, both eyeballs should diverge. So divergence is an action of a lateral rectus muscle. So if that lateral rectus muscle is weak, then you get esophoria more for far. So when you're looking at a distance, the lateral rectus is unable to pull the eyeballs, both the eyeballs separately outside. That's why the eyeballs tend to converge inside. And non-specific type. In non-specific type, there is some imbalance between the muscles. So there is no variation with the distance. Either for near or far, the amount of deviation is the same. That is esophoria. And the opposite for exophoria. In exophoria, eyeballs tend to diverge. So the opposite happens. Here there is convergence excess. Here there is convergence weakness. So medial rectus is weak, so lateral rectus is overacting, so there is more exophoria. So even for near vision, you use medial rectus more. So for near, the exophoria will be more because medial rectus is weak here, lateral rectus is strong, so it pulls the eyeball outside. Similarly, divergence excess type. In divergence excess also, medial rectus should have some amount of action to pull the eyeballs inside. But as the medial rectus is already weak here, because already we said convergence weakness, medial rectus is already weak. So when you are looking far also, the medial rectus should keep the eye straight. But the medial rectus is not acting. So lateral rectus will overact and the eyeballs will diverge. So that is divergence excess or exophoria more for far. And non-specific type, there is no variation with distance. So here basically remember that medial rectus is weak. So when you are doing near work, medial rectus should work more. So medial rectus, what happens? It is weak. So the lateral rectus overacts and it causes excess of the outward deviation. Similarly, when you are looking at a far object, the eyeball should remain straight. So because it should remain straight because of simultaneous action of medial rectus and lateral rectus. Here medial rectus is weak, so lateral rectus overacts. There is divergence excess. So there is exophoria more for far. And non-specific variation or no variation with distance. These are the various types of heterophoria. And other types are hyperphoria and cyclophoria. So that was only about horizontal movements. If vertically also, eyeball is moving up and down, that is, I told you, positive vertical vergence and negative vertical vergence. And similarly, cyclophoria, intorsion and extorsion. If that one is also, it is latent, and if you do some tests, if that is also getting manifest, it is called hyperphoria and cyclophoria. Now, what is the etiology? Anatomical. It could be because of orbital asymmetry, wide interpupillary distance, faulty muscle insertion, etc. And physiological age. So small people, children have a strong accommodation. So usually children can accommodate up to 14 to 15 diopters extra. By the age of 40 years when you reach, you might be seeing your parents. When they reach the age of 40, they'll be using reading glasses for near. Because while doing near work, we need accommodation. For accommodation, we need ciliary muscle as well as the medial rectus muscle. Ciliary muscle for causing constriction of the pupil, as well as the increase in the anterior curvature of the lens, and this medial rectus for convergence. So when the child is young age, when the child is newly born, he has nearly 14 to 15 diopters of accommodation. But as the age increases, by the age of 40 years, it comes down to 3 to 4 diopters. By the age of 60 years, it is almost zero. So in small children, if in PG entries, they might be asking you, so which is the most common type of squint in small children? In small children, it is usually esotropia, that is convergence. Why convergence? Because accommodation is strong in children. It is almost up to 14 to 15 diopters, which in accommodation, there is convergence because of medial rectus muscle contraction and also ciliary muscle constriction. Similarly, near work people, you see there are people who are doing tailoring, tailors, or those who do weaving and knitting and all those who do near work. So watch repair mechanics and all these things, they do excess near work. So while doing near work, they continuously keep using their accommodation and medial rectus muscle. So watch mechanics as well as tailors and all those who do more amount of near work, they also have esotropia because of physiological excessive usage of the medial rectus muscle. So physiological, as per age, in children people, medial rectus and convergence is strong. So esotropia is common in young. And similarly, people who do near work like tailors and those who do weaving and knitting, for them also near work is more. And watch mechanics. And similarly, decompensation. Suppose the child gets fever. This heterophoria, if you, I told you heterophoria, you can diagnose it only if you do some tests. Sometimes if the person has some fever, or he has got some psychiatric problem, or if there is an inadequate fusional reserve. Suppose the brain is unable to fuse both the images. For example, the rabbit example I told you. Suppose the brain is weak, he has got some neurological problems, some infarct in his brain or some hemorrhage in his brain. his occipital cortex is gone. He's unable to fuse both the images. So that patient is generally weak, so that his extraocular muscles also become weak because they are also skeletal muscles. He has some fever or he has got some tuberculosis. His general condition is poor. At that time, the muscles don't work well. So in that case, the heterophoria gets decompensated and it becomes manifest squint or heterotropia. So because of the action of the extraocular muscles, both the eyeballs are looking straight. Suppose the patient is anemic or the patient got some fever and he has got some weakness. So the muscles become weak. And the heterophoria, which is already the muscles are weak, the weakness is exacerbated because of this fever or tuberculosis or whatever it may be. And immediately the eyeballs tend to diverge or converge. That is, the squint becomes manifest. That is known as decompensation. At that time, the patient complains of double vision, diplopia, confusion, and all this. Okay, what are the symptoms? In compensated, there are no symptoms. Like you and me, I told you heterophoria is universal. Every one of us have heterophoria, so we don't have any symptoms in case of compensated one. But in decompensation, that is while doing some tests, either cover test or uncover test, or else decompensation because of fatigue or fever or something, when there is a deviation, there might be photophobia, headache, eye ache, blurred vision, intermittent diplopia, and squint. And symptoms of defective postural sensations of pilots while landing. What is this one is, I told you in that first diagram I have shown you. Those who have a squint, the object appears to be present somewhere else. So in this diagram, if you see, actually the object is here, but because of this squint, the object appears as if it is located somewhere here. Imagine there is a pilot who is going to land his aeroplane. Suddenly he develops a squint. So when a pilot, while he's landing, he'll be seeing the runway in two diagrams. Actually, the pilot should see only one runway. But because of this diplopia double vision, what will happen is the pilot will be seeing two runways. So he doesn't know where to land his plane. Ultimately, it will lead to an aircraft crash. So that's why there is a false projection. False projection is that actually the image is present here in space. But because of this double vision or because of this squint, the image appears as if it is present somewhere here. That is because of difference in the X, Y, and Z coordinates of this particular point on the retina where this image is falling. So think of a pilot who is driving a plane and who is going to land his plane. At that time, he's unable to see the runway and where he's going to land, either here or here. So it becomes a disaster. So that's why we have to evaluate very carefully for all the train drivers, flight pilots and all about squint and all. Ophthalmology examination is very important for them. So symptoms, if it is compensated and both the eyes are looking straight, no problem. But if it is decompensated, that is both the eyes are looking, one eye is deviated, other eye is looking straight, then you can get the symptoms of defective postural sensations. That is one, the object is present somewhere else, etc. Now, coming to the important part, what are the various investigations or tests that you have to perform in order to diagnose this squint? So any case of squint, suppose if there is already a deviation of the eyeball, the parent comes to you saying that my child's eye is deviating outside, so what I should do. Like that, they will come to you. So if suppose it is a heterophoria and he has come for us, suppose there is a pilot who is going to be newly recruited. So the Indigo Airlines will ask you, you are an ophthalmologist, will ask you, kindly examine this case and let me know whether he's having any problem in his eyes or not. So along with his vision and color vision, you also have to test for squint. So if there is a manifest squint, there is no problem. Definitely he will himself reject. But the problem comes with this heterophoria or latent squint, because both eyes will be looking straight. You don't know who is having squint and who is not having squint. So then you have to perform a battery of investigations or tests to elicit whether he's really having heterophoria or not. Suppose there is a pilot, you won't examine him correctly. So he's really having some heterophoria, but you won't do any tests and you will say that he's completely normal. He doesn't have any heterophoria and you give a certificate. And suppose he has got some fever and suddenly while driving the plane, he gets some fever. And while landing, his heterophoria becomes decompensated and he goes into manifest squint. Then there will be a plane crash. That's why it is very important. We have to very keenly and deeply and thoroughly investigate a patient when he's going for such kind of a post. So visual acuity and refraction, we'll see how much is visual acuity. So refraction, if you are having any spectacles, you might have already undergone a refraction and a visual acuity by now. And then Hirschberg's corneal reflex test, what is that we will see. Krimsky's test, what is that we'll see. Cover uncover test, I will show you in videos. Prism cover test, Maddox rod test, Maddox wing test, measurement of convergence and accommodation. So in exam, mostly they will ask you about this visual acuity. It is common for cataract and practical examinations. For everywhere, they will ask you visual acuity. And this refraction, they will ask you some part that they will cover in refractive errors chapter. And this Hirschberg corneal reflex test, they will ask you. And cover uncover test, they will ask you. And Maddox rod. So these four are important. Visual acuity and refraction, that will be dealt in refractive errors class. HCRT, we will see today or tomorrow's class. And then cover uncover test and Maddox rod test. So Maddox rod, cover uncover, and Hirschberg's corneal reflex test. For your level, these three things at least you have to be knowing thoroughly. You have to be knowing, okay? Measurement of fusion, reserve, accumulation, all that are not required, and most of them also don't do in practice also. So what is this cover test? So cover test is done to detect tropias. So cover the fixing eye or normal eye, the deviated eye takes a fixation. So what is this? We will see. And what is an uncover test? It is to detect phorias, cover the defective eye for a few seconds, remove the cover, and look for the movement on uncovering. So everything is looking same. And alternate cover and uncover test. So what is all this? We will see in a small video. Hopefully this will take this class. Okay. Is the video visible to you all? This one, detection of strabismus cover test by Dr. Corney Coplains. Is it visible? Okay, if it is not visible, you kindly tell me. You can raise hand. So basically, this cover test and uncover test, it can be done at near part. That is at a distance of 1/3 meter. That is roughly 33 centimeters. Normally, the reading distance is said to be 25 to 33 centimeters. So when you are reading any book or when you are watching your mobile or laptop, always make sure to keep it at a distance of 33 centimeters because that is the ideal distance in order to avoid any stress and strain to your eyes. And similarly, this cover test can also be performed for distance. That is, while performing cover and uncover test, what we do is we ask the patient to look at an object. So the patient will be looking at a particular object. Suppose your finger is there. We ask the patient to look at this finger. So, and then we perform the cover and uncover test because we need to have fusion. Both the eyeballs should be looking at a common object. Only then we can exactly infer whether there is any deviation or not. So ask the patient to look at your finger. Okay. And this is for near. If it is for a distance, we give a Snellen's chart. On the Snellen's chart, we ask him to look at a particular alphabet, either A or X or Z. And we ask him to keep constantly looking at that particular object. And then we go on doing the tests. Okay. It can be done with correction or without correction. With correction means with his spectacle glasses. Without correction means without his spectacle glasses. Okay. Without spectacle correction. Okay, so cover test and uncover test, we make the patient to sit comfortably in a room and we put a finger or we give him a test. If we are doing at a near distance, at a near we want to know because see you want to know whether it is a convergence axis. So if it is a convergence axis, how can you know? Only if you test for near distance only you can know whether it is a convergence axis. So you give him a near target. You ask him to look at a book or look at a finger and perform the test. If you want to know if it is a divergence weakness. So divergence, when it will be there, when you are looking at a far object like a Snellen's chart, there will be divergence in actions of a lateral rectus muscle. So if you want to test for convergence axis, you test for a near object. If you want to test for divergence axis or divergence weakness, you give him a distant object chart and ask him to see. And it can be done with his glasses correction or without glasses correction. So you can check with glasses how much of error is there and without glasses how much is there. Because some squints can just be corrected with glasses. Suppose the patient is having some squint without glasses. Without glasses, he's using excess of accommodation. That's why he's having convergence excess. So just by simply giving him spectacles, his squint will become normalized because he's using excessive of accommodation because of lack of glasses. Now, if you give him that +3 or +4 power, for accommodation, we need plus power. +2 or +3. Now, because there are no glasses, the patient is using excessive accommodation like +2 or +3. That's why both eyes are converging. So in place of that, if you give him a spectacles with +2 or +3 power, automatically he need not use his accommodation. So then automatically what will happen is his squint will become normal. It will get corrected. So that is how we do with, so to differentiate this, we do with correction and without correction. Okay. Next. That is what you do. And next we'll go to the video. So this is actually available in YouTube also. You can see later on, or even this video is going to be uploaded in YouTube. So this is a cover test. So here you see, this is the right eye and this is the left eye. Okay. Here what he has given, this is the right eye and this is the left eye. This bottom dialog box also you see, and this diagram also you see. Same diagrams, what I told you for diplopia and confusion, how they are. Okay. So here what it is given, the right eye is normal without any pathology. Left eye is normal without any pathology. See, both eyes are looking straight like you and me. It is all normal. There is no pathology. Right eye is normal. Left eye is normal. The image is falling exactly on the fovea of both the eyes. Everything is normal. No problem. Patient is very comfortable. Now, you got a doubt that probably this patient is having some heterophoria. Heterophoria means latent squint. So latent squint means because of fusion, both these eyes are appearing straight. But if you do some cover test or uncover test, one eye may deviate. So you have to test them. So to know whether this patient is normal or is having some squint heterophoria or not, what you do some tests. What are they? Cover test, uncover test, and alternate cover test. So what is this? We will see. Okay. See, this both the eyes are normal here. This is a cover. So in this cover test, what it happens is this we give him a fixation target. Suppose for near we are performing. Both the eyes are looking at this finger. Now this eye is looking at the finger, and this eye is also looking at the finger initially. Now what I did is I took a cover and I covered this right eye. So now this right eye will not be seeing my finger. This left eye is exactly only seeing my finger. So now what happens is both the eyes are normal here. In this first scenario, this is a normal person. There is no pathology. So now when you cover that eye, what will happen? See, this eye, there is no deviation. It is looking straight. Okay. On covering one eye, there is no deviation in the other eye. And on removing the cover also, there is no deviation in this eye. Okay. So you see, he's putting the cover and removing it. See, this is normal. Both eyes are looking straight. Both eyes are looking at my finger. So there is no, now he's covering. When he's covering, this eye is still remaining straight. So there is no problem. It is normal. Okay. Now when he removes the cover, you see what is happening. Let's wait for a few seconds. See, when he removes the cover also, this eye is looking straight. That means this person is absolutely normal. He is not having any squint. The same thing you will apply for this eye also. This eye also will cover and uncover, and you will see whether there is a movement or not. So any without pathology, there is no problem. Everything is normal. So the same thing you do for the left eye also. See, now he's performing the same thing for the left eye. So when the left eye is covered, the right eye is looking straight. You have to do for both eyes, because here you don't know if it's a latent squint, you don't know whether the right eye is affected or left eye is affected. So that's why you have to perform the cover test and uncover test for both the eyes, because this eye you will cover, this eye is looking straight, but this eye might be having some problem. So unless you cover this eye, you don't know whether it is also having some pathology or not. So cover test should be performed for both eyes. So when you occlude the cover, you see whether there is any deviation or not. Okay. So see here, both eyes, there is no pathology. So nothing is happening. Both eyes are looking straight. And you can use this transparent occluders also. So if you want to see the movement, so because when you apply the cover, you don't know whether the eye is moving behind the cover or not. So you can use a transparent one. This transparent one is also enough to break the fusion. Here what you do is you just break the fusion. Breaking the fusion is important. Just the image form on one of the retina should be blurred. Because in squint, what happens is both the eyes should have a clear image. If one eye is having a blurred image, automatically squint develops. So if you blur the image in this one eye by putting this transparent cover or total complete cover also, no problem. That will cause a decompensation and it will cause a squint. Okay. So now you see in the next example, what he does is, so without pathology also, see, you can see there is no movement of the eye. Again, he's performing the cover and uncover test with the transparent occluder, semi-transparent occluder. With that also, there is no pathology and everything is looking fine. So till now, I hope you are all clear. So we are covering, there is no movement. So suppose there is a heterotropia. Heterotropia means manifest squint. So here you see in the right eye, what he did in right eye, he said monocular heterotropia, left eye is normal. I told you tropia means manifest squint. That is, as soon as you see the patient's face, you can tell that he's having a squint because of deviation of eyeball. So here you can see that the right eye, there is a deviation of the eyeball, left eye is normal. So in right eye, it is a manifest squint. That is, already there is a deviation of the eyeball. Here no need to do any test. Directly on seeing the patient itself, you can say that there is a squint. So any patient you see in your ward whose eye is deviating like this, you can say that he's having a squint. This is known as manifest squint, also known as heterotropia. So in this scenario, this right eye is having a monocular heterotropia, but the left eye is normal. There is no pathology. So in this case, what happens is both the eyes are looking at an object. Here the false projection, everything is there. In this bottom right diagram, you can see. In this left eye, it is falling on the fovea, but right eye, the image is falling somewhere else on a non-corresponding point. Okay. So now here you do perform cover and uncover test and see what is going to happen. So here now we are covering the normal eye. Okay. Video కనబడట్లేదా? Is the video visible? ఇందాక అడిగాను మరి ఎవరు చెప్పలేదు, చాట్లో పెట్టారా? నేను చూసుకోవాలి, చాలాసేపు అయింది. చాట్ నోటిఫికేషన్ రాలేదు. అంటే మళ్ళీ చెప్పాలా? 10:45 టైం. Okay, is the video visible now? Okay, video is visible now. Okay, once again I'll repeat it. No problem. Sorry, I couldn't see the chat. Also, notification didn't come here, so I couldn't see that. So here basically you see from here we'll be covering. So there is a thing called cover test and uncover test. Okay. So basically, I told you heterophoria and heterotropia. Okay. In heterophoria, it is a latent squint. Okay. In latent squint, what it is there is both the eyes are looking straight, but it might be having some pathology, which will express outside only when we do some tests. So what are the tests, sir? Cover test, uncover test, and alternate cover test. So these will be done with a near and a distance. So what we do is, suppose I told you what are the types of heterophoria, convergence excess and divergence weakness type. So suppose there is a convergence excess. So in convergence excess, what happens is, suppose you give a near target. So when you give a near target, what happens is, when there is a convergence excess, some squint develops. Because of convergence, there is some esotropia. Whereas for divergence, it is all normal. So suppose you want to know whether there is any divergence excess or not. So divergence excess means it is for a distance. So suppose you want to know whether the lateral rectus muscle is normal or not. So what you do is you make the patient sit comfortably in a room. You give him a distance target or a Snellen's chart. You ask him to look at a particular object, A or X or Z or some particular letter, and then you perform this cover and uncover tests. So when you perform this cover and uncover test for a distance, if there is any movement of the eyeball or deviations, then you can say that there is some divergence excess. Okay, and this can be done with correction or without correction. If you do with glasses, suppose there is a convergent squint. When you want to read some near object, what you have to do is you should while reading near object, what you have to do, your convergence gets activated. So both eyeballs converge together when you are doing a near object. So when there is suppose the patient is having some accommodative insufficiency. The patient is unable to read a book. At the age of 40 years, in your parents, you might have seen that they might be using some reading glasses. Why? Because at birth, we have almost 14 to 15 diopters of accommodation. Whereas by the age of 40, we have only 3 diopters of accommodation. So while reading a book, what happens is, we need some amount of accommodation to read the book clearly. So that amount of accommodation power is lacking in that particular eye because of weakness of some ciliary muscle. So then what happens is the patient tries to accommodate more. So when he tries to accommodate more, automatically the eyeballs tend to converge more. So then you can get a squint or an esotropia. Now what happens is, suppose he is excessively accommodating, suppose normally for that particular age, we need 10 diopters of accommodation, but the patient is having only 8 diopters of accommodation. 8 diopters of accommodation because of some weakness in his muscles. So then what happens is we can give that extra 1 diopter of accommodation in form of a glasses. If we give him a spectacles, that accommodation he won't use excess, there will not be any convergence, and automatically these eyeballs will become straight. So spectacle correction is itself a treatment for squint. Because for a near target, if there is an excessive of accommodation, we can give him some glasses and correct the squint. Okay, so that's why cover test, this test should be performed either at a near. If you want to know whether it is a convergence excess or not, you should see at a near part. If you want to see it is a divergence weakness or not, you have to see at a distance part. Similarly, with glasses and without glasses, you will see. Suppose with glasses, there is some squint. There is no squint, and without glasses, there is a squint. Simply, you can give glasses and you can say you can treat that squint part. No need to go for any surgeries. Okay. Hope the video is being shown. Okay. Okay, so that's why with glasses and without glasses, you have to check. Suppose without glasses, there is a squint, and with the glasses, the squint is completely normal. Then you can just give a glasses so that his problem is solved. No need to go for any complicated surgeries. Now, what are the tests we do? We do some tests known as cover test, uncover test, and alternate cover tests. So this one we'll be seeing in today's class. No hurry in that. Nothing in chat, no? Okay. So see. This is a video taken from the YouTube. Okay, you can see it in YouTube also. So this is a normal person. So here you can see, here it is showing both the eyes are looking straight. In this bottom left corner, you can see the right eye and left eye is mentioned here. And then right eye is without any pathology. And left eye is also without any pathology. And here you can see this diagram, which I told you for diplopia and confusion. Both the images of the images falling on the fovea of both the eyes, left eye as well as the right eye. There is no diplopia, everything is fine. So this patient, both the eyes are looking straight, both the eyes are no pathology, everything is good. The patient is happy, you are happy, I'm happy. Okay. Now he is applying for some pilot license. So now we have to know whether he is having any latent squint or not. So if it is a manifest squint, no problem. The eyeball will be deviated and you can easily say that he's having squint. But when both the eyes are looking straight, you have a doubt whether it is normal or is having some squint. So that is the doubt you get here. Okay. Now you have to do some tests known as cover test and uncover test to know whether he's really having a squint or not. Now you see, we are covering this eye. We ask the patient to look at a near object. When both his eyes are open, we ask the patient to look at your finger. Suppose we are doing it for the near. The patient is looking at your finger. Okay. So when he's looking, see now this eye is fixing at your finger. It's looking at a near object, and this eye we are covering. There is no deviation in this eye. This eye is again still maintaining the same fixation. So now we removed the cover. Even on removing the cover also, this eye is looking straight. There is no deviation in the eye. That means both eyes are normal. This eye is normal. Okay. So the same test you will repeat for the other eye also. Okay. See, for the left eye also you'll repeat. So both the eyes are normal here. Now you don't know whether there's any latent squint heterophoria or not. So here what you do is you occlude one eye and you see whether there is any movement in the other eye or not. Okay. So there is no movement. Everything is perfect. So there is no squint. Like that you have to do for both eyes, because in latent squint you don't know which eye is abnormal. The pathology can be either in the right eye or either can be in the left eye. That's why for both eyes you will cover and you will see on covering whether there is any movement of this eye or not, and on removing the cover if there is any movement of this eye or not. So here there is no movement. So this eye, when you are covering, this eye is normal. Similarly, the same thing you will do for this eye. We are applying the cover and removing the cover. Everything is normal. And you see this eye is looking straight. So there is no problem. This person is good. You can give him a license. Okay. So now the second, we'll go into pathology part. So suppose there is a heterotropia. I told you tropia means manifest squint. See, suppose there is any one of your friends or a patient you see. If the eyeball is deviated like that, just by seeing his face, you can say that he's having some squint. Okay. So because this is known as manifest squint. Manifest because it is appearing directly outside. As soon as you see his face itself, you can say that he's having some squint. So it is a manifest squint or heterotropia. It is an esotropia in this right eye. So you see the right eye, there is a heterotropia. Right eye is deviated inside, left eye is looking straight. Okay, so this is a manifest squint. So here what you do a cover test. So you give a fixation target, ask both of them to look at a finger. Okay, so now what will happen is you start doing a cover test. So you see the video, what he will do. So he's taking the cover, and the cover what he's doing. See, suppose both the eyes are looking at my finger here. Okay, left eye is looking straight, but it's right eye, because of suppression, it is not seeing anything. Now what I did is I covered this left eye. When I covered this left eye, automatically see what happened to this right eye. This right eye became straight. So again you see the right eye is deviated inwards and the left eye is looking straight. Okay. Now what you do, you take a cover and you take the cover and put it on this left eye, which is looking straight. On the left eye, you put a cover. Okay. Let's wait till he puts it. So on putting a cover the left eye, what happened? This right eye is looking straight. That means this is not a paralytic squint. This is a concomitant squint. That is the inference from the cover test. So from cover test, what you can say that it is a heterotropia. That is, on covering this eye is taking fixation. So what are the inferences from this is the vision in this eye is good. The vision in this right eye is very good. That's why it is taking fixation. So you are showing him your finger. So this left eye is looking, this right eye is not looking. Because of suppression, it went inside previously. Now when you occluded this right eye, because there is good vision in this right eye, it is taking up fixation, it is looking at your finger. So your first point, what you notice from this is, this right eye is having good vision. That is point number one. Second thing is, this is not a paralytic squint. If it were a paralytic squint, suppose the right lateral rectus muscle has been paralyzed, this eyeball won't take up fixation. That means this is a concomitant squint. That is, it is not a paralytic squint. There is no paralysis of these muscles, and the vision is also good in this particular eye. So this is the inference what you do from your cover test. So from cover test, you can know that it is a heterotropia, and you can also know that vision is good in this eye. This eye has not gone into amblyopia. So even if you do some surgery or give some spectacles, there is chances that you can get some vision. If even after covering, this eye is not taking up fixation, that means there is no use of doing surgery, because this eye is already blind. That's why it is not taking up fixation. So from cover test, what you can know is, if this eyeball is, this deviated eye is taking up fixation, it means the vision is good in that eye. So if you do surgery also, there will be some use to the patient. And because the eye is taking a fixation, it means it is not any paralytic. So you need not to go for any neuroimaging. If it's a paralytic squint, you have to evaluate if there is any brain tumor or any infarcts in the brainstem or not, or any orbital lesions. All these things you have to see if there's an orbital tumor, etc. But this eye is taking up fixation. That means it is only a concomitant squint because of imbalance between the muscle. The Herring's law, Sherrington's law, all these laws, there's an imbalance between the extraocular muscles causing this squint. So if you do surgery on these muscles, Just that is enough. If you weaken or strengthen the respective muscles, that is enough for this. So that is the inference you get from this cover test. Okay. So that was about cover test. So monocular heterotropia. Okay, that eye is taking fixation. Suppose alternating heterotropia. Now what happened in the previous example, you see, if you cover this eye, what happens? It is going on normally. If you cover this eye, the other eye is not having any deviation. Now there is a condition called alternate heterotropia. Now probably see, if this eye is totally blind, it won't see anything, it will get deviated. Suppose both eyes are having equal vision. Suppose both eyes are having equal vision. So then what happens is, see, actually what is happening here, we'll see an example, you'll understand. Heterotropia, hope you all are clear with that. If any doubts, please message. Okay. So see, next if it is only this eye is deviated, you cover this eye will take up fixation, everything is normal. So you came to a diagnosis that there is a monocular heterotropia. Okay. Now second thing is alternating. Suppose if both eyes are having heterotropia, then how to diagnose? The alternating heterotropia. Here see, this eye is fixating and this eye is looking inside. So for some time this eye is looking straight, and later on what happens? For sometimes the other eye is looking straight. Here you see, here this eye is taking up fixation. So you are thinking that this eye is having heterotropia and this eye is normal. But again, if you see, this eye is going inside and this eye is looking straight. That means it is alternating. Here when it happens is, suppose both eyes are having equal vision. Then brain what it does is, for one hour this eye will be using, for 1 hour this eye will be using. So in alternating heterotropia what happens is, for some period of time one eye will be fixating, and for some period of time one eye will be fixating. Now how to know whether this is a heterotropia only in one eye or heterotropia in both eyes? Then what you have to do is, you have to perform the cover test for both the eyes here. For both the eyes, if you perform cover test, see now in this scenario, you occluded this eye is looking straight. Okay. Now what happens is, on removing the cover, what will happen, you see. See, on removing the eye, what happens is, this eye is again taking a fixation, this eye is deviating inside. Again you see. See, normally this is the condition. Here what we are thinking is, the right eye is normal and left eye is abnormal. On seeing the patient, we think his right eye is normal and left eye is abnormal. Okay, that is what we see. So that is what we come to know from this particular position, that this right eye is normal, left eye is abnormal. So now what we do to test for this? So see, here in alternating heterotropia, we see that the right eye is normal and left eye is abnormal. If you cover the right eye, this left eye is taking a fixation. But when you remove the cover, you see this eye is also deviating. So that shows that both eyes are having squint, but one of them is fixing for some time. So again, you see, you think that right eye is normal and left eye is abnormal. So now what you do, you put a cover on the right eye, as we thought. Left eye took a fixation. So we think that only left eye is having squint. But when you remove the cover of this particular eye, so when you remove this cover, you see this eye has deviated inside. That means here both eyes are having squint, but both eyes are alternatingly moving. So here what you do is, this is known as cover uncover test. So once you cover this eye, this one took up fixation. But when you remove the cover, this eye is also again deviating. So this shows that there is squint in both the eyes, but it is alternating. Sometimes one eye is being used and sometimes other eye is being used. Same thing you do for this eye. When you close this eye is taking up fixation. So when you remove that, you see this eye is deviated. Okay. That means that eye is also having pathology. So when you perform the cover test for both the eyes, you can know whether it is any alternating squint or not. Hope you are clear. Now we will go for heterophoria. That was about manifest squint. This is all a little confusing. You have to read twice or thrice and go through this video again and again so that you can understand. Here everything is given in this description here. So nothing to get confused about. Next, heterophoria. So we have three entities. One is heterotropia. Next is alternating squint, and other is heterophoria. I told you about heterotropia and alternating squint. Now we'll see about heterophoria. In heterophoria, you see, here what you have to do is, you have to do an uncover test. So uncover test means, see, here you occluded this one, and now you remove the cover. So when you remove the cover, the eyeball is immediately taking up fixation. That shows that there is a latent squint. So here you see there is no manifest squint. Both eyes are looking straight. You are thinking that the patient is abnormal. But when you cover the eye and remove the cover, As soon as you remove the cover, the eye will have a movement. So that is known as uncovered test. See, here initially you are thinking that both eyes are looking straight. Now what you think there is no cover, you kept a cover, and immediately as soon as you remove the cover. So as soon as you remove the cover, see what this is called uncovered test. As soon as you remove the cover, you see the eyeball deviated from inside to outside. So this is known as heterophoria latent squint. Latent squint means both eyeballs appear as if they are looking straight, but only when you remove the cover, the eyeball moves outside. This is known as uncovered test. So that is heterophoria. So that is known as heterophoria. So this is a little confusing. You have to read once, you have to read it twice or thrice, or see this video again and again. In YouTube also this video is available along with this pathology. So when you put the cover and remove it, it is called heterophoria. So for this eye, you got a confirmation that it is having some latent squint. So same thing you'll repeat for this eye and also and see whether there is any deviation or not. So from that you come to know whether there is any latent squint or not. So that is about cover test, uncover test. So here if you use a transparent occluder, you can see clearly, because if you don't know whether to examine clearly or not, as soon as you remove the cover, the eyeball may immediately fix it. You don't know. So put a semi-transparent occluder and see. When you put a semi-transparent occluder, you can gradually see. See, initially both the eyes are looking straight. And next, when you kept a semi-transparent occluder, the eyeball went inside. That means this is a latent squint. And when you remove that semi-transparent occluder, the eyeball became straight. So this is the uncover test. So from uncover test, you can know whether there is any heterophoria or not. From cover test, you can know whether it is any heterotropia or not. From alternate cover and cover test, you can know whether it is any alternating squint is present or not. In heterophoria, both eyes look as if they are present in straight, whereas in heterotropia, you see that there is some deviation like this. In these cases, you have to identify whether it is heterotropia only in one eye or alternating between both eyes by performing alternate cover and uncover test. Okay. So that is about this videos. Hope you are clear. Any doubts you can ask later on. Hope you are clear or still confused. So that was about this cover and uncover test. With this we will stop for today. Okay, any doubts regarding that cover and uncover test? Little confusing, but still you have to read. Anything you want? Or again, you want one more class extra also, you can ask so that, okay, so shall we end it today here then? Tomorrow once I'll give a next class, I'll give a small recap about this cover and cover test, and then we'll go for the next ones. Okay, so we'll end it. Any more doubts? Or everyone has seen the video, no? Okay, all others, the video was visible? Okay, okay then, thank you. So we'll call it a day for today, and we'll see the next things in the next class. Okay, bye then. Okay, thank you, bye.
Next class.